Hey Blockheads, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're not just going to be mining for diamonds, we're going to dig deep into something even more fundamental to our world, the very building blocks of life itself.
Yeah, think of this deep dive as us trying to understand the crafting recipes for every creature and plant you've ever seen in the overworld or even beyond.
Right, you are. And hey, the learner? Thanks for the scrolls. These fascinating scientific summaries to help us on our quest. We're going to go from the tiniest little single-celled mobs all the way up to the biggest trees in the forest, ready to grab your torches and get spelunking.
Absolutely.
All right, our first stop on this deep dive. Cells.
Oh, yeah, cells are cool.
Well, what are they? So every living thing in Minecraft, I'm talking to everything from a little slime to a huge iron golem, is made up of these teeny tiny units called cells. They're like the most basic building blocks.
Exactly. And just like we can build a simple little hut or like a massive sprawling castle, living things can be unicellular, meaning just one cell or multicellular with tons of cells all working together.
So a single-celled organism that's like a lone wolf just doing its own thing, right?
Right.
And a multicellular one is like a bustling village with everyone pitching in.
Precisely.
Okay, cool. So let's zoom in on these cells. What's going on inside them?
Well, they've got different parts, kind of like different workshops in a village. There's the nucleus, for example.
Nucleus, that sounds important.
It is. Think of it like the village library or the blueprint storage room. It holds all the essential information, the chromosomes, for how the cell works.
Like a master instruction manual.
Yep, and to keep those instructions safe, the nucleus is wrapped in its own protective membrane.
Gotcha. What about this cytoplasm I keep hearing about? It sounds kind of gooey.
Haha, it kind of is. The cytoplasm is like a jelly that fills up the cell. It holds all the different parts in place and cushions them.
So it's like the packing peanuts of the cell, keeping everything safe and sound.
Exactly.
Awesome. What about the cell membrane? Is that like the outer wall of the cell?
It is. The cell membrane protects the cell from the outside world and controls what can go in and out, kind of like border guards.
I see. So they decide what resources and stuff can enter and leave.
You got it. Now, for our plant enthusiasts out there, there's also the chloroplast.
Chloroplast. Sounds like it has something to do with plants being green.
You're right. Chloroplasts are found in plant cells, and they contain chlorophyll. That's what makes plants green and lets them do photosynthesis.
Photosynthesis, the big word.
Yeah, it's how plants make their own food using sunlight. You can think of chloroplasts like a plant's very own food-making furnace powered by the sun.
Whoa, so plants don't need to go hunting for food. They just make it themselves. That's awesome.
It is, and this is a really important point. Plants don't need to hunt or trade for food. They make it using the sun.
So all those farms we build in Minecraft, that's just us copying what plants do naturally.
Exactly. Now, these cells, they don't just sit around, right? How do new cells appear?
Yeah, they got to come from somewhere.
Well, new cells are made through cell division. That's when one cell, the parent cell, splits into two new cells called daughter cells. Think of it like splitting a stack of blocks into two smaller stacks.
So it's like duplicating your building blocks. That's super useful.
It is, and this cell division thing, it's the driving force behind growth and repair.
How does that work in Minecraft?
Well, think about it. When you plant a sapling and it grows into a huge oak tree, that's because the number of cells is increasing. That's growth.
Makes sense.
And when you get blown up by a creeper and lose health, your body repairs that damage by, you guessed it, dividing cells to replace the ones that got hurt.
Oh, so it's like patching up those holes in our bills after a creeper attack.
Exactly. And for the learner who's busy building that epic castle they're always talking about, cell division means an endless supply of blocks to build with and fix any damage.
Cell division is like a superpower.
Absolutely. Now, there's one more thing about cell division, a special type called meiosis.
Meiosis. What's that about?
Well, in multicellular organisms, meiosis is involved in reproduction.
Reproduction. You mean like making baby animals?
Precisely. It's how new organisms are created.
Whoa, so cell division is responsible for all kinds of things, growth, repair, even making new life.
Exactly.
But wait a sec, all this activity must take a ton of energy.
Yeah.
How do our cells get the power to do all this stuff? It's got to be more than just cake, right?
Yeah, it's a bit more complex than that. Cells get their energy through a process called respiration.
Respiration, what's that?
It's basically how cells unlock the energy stored inside them, allowing us and all living things to do everything we do, from mining and building to even just existing.
That sounds important. So what do cells need for this respiration thing? Like what ingredients do we need for our furnaces?
The key ingredients are oxygen, the stuff we breathe, and glucose, which is a type of sugar.
Oxygen and sugar.
Yep. And the byproducts of respiration are carbon dioxide and water.
Interesting. So the oxygen we breathe is actually fuel for our cells.
Precisely. It's an elegant exchange, really. The waste product of one process becomes the essential ingredient for another.
That's cool. Now, remember how we talked about single-celled and multicellular organisms?
Yeah.
Well, in those multicellular ones, the cells don't just hang out solo. They work together, right? How does that happen?
It all starts with different types of cells grouping together to form tissues, kind of like using different kinds of wood to build a structure.
Okay, I can see that.
Then these tissues, they work together to create organs. Think of those like crafting tables.
Oh, yeah, specific tools for specific jobs.
Exactly. And finally, organs join forces in organ systems to do big, important tasks, like our inventory system.
So organs working together like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, and there are so many different types of cells out there. Cheek cells, lung cells, skin cells, blood cells, muscle cells. Each one is specialized for a specific job.
Like all the villagers in a bustling village. What
Exactly.
kind of organ systems are we talking about in us multicellular folks?
Well, there's the respiratory system, that's our lungs, and the circulatory system, that's our blood and heart.
Essential.
These two systems work together to move gases, nutrients, and water all around the body. Then we've got the digestive system, which breaks down food and absorbs the good stuff. And of course, the excretory system to get rid of waste.
So it's like a massive redstone circuit with each part playing a crucial role.
You got it. Everything's interconnected.
All right, let's take a break from us humans for a sec and chat about plants again.
Sure.
We touched on photosynthesis earlier, but how do plants get their energy exactly? They don't have to mine for coal or anything.
Nope. They get their energy directly from the sun through photosynthesis. They need sunlight, carbon dioxide from the air, and water from the ground.
Like a magic potion. So for the learner who loves hanging out in lush forests, understanding photosynthesis shows how these amazing biomes keep themselves running.
Precisely.
So what's the magic formula for photosynthesis?
It's actually pretty simple. Carbon dioxide plus water plus light energy equals glucose plus oxygen.
That sounds kind of familiar.
It's like respiration in reverse.
Right. So plants take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen, and we do the opposite.
Exactly. It's this really cool exchange where one process's waste becomes fuel for the other. Photosynthesis happens in those chloroplasts we talked about and needs sunlight. And respiration happens in things called mitochondria and needs glucose and oxygen.
It's like a perfect partnership. This exchange is way more than just a reverse. It's this huge interconnected web of life on Earth and a delicate balancing act for our atmosphere.
Exactly. And another fun fact is that photosynthesis can't happen in the dark. It needs the sun's energy. But respiration, that can happen all the time, whether it's light or dark.
Wow, so much going on in the plant world. Let's break down the different parts of a plant, shall we?
Let's do it.
We've got flowers. They're super pretty, but what do they actually do?
Flowers are the reproductive parts of the plant, and they attract pollinators with their bright colors and yummy scents.
Like a beacon to friendly visitors.
Exactly. Then there are the roots. They're more than just anchors.
Oh yeah, roots are super important.
They hold the plant in the ground, of course, but they also absorb water and nutrients from the soil and even store food like carbohydrates, sugars, and proteins.
So they're like the plant's miners constantly digging up resources.
You got it. Now the stem, that's like the plant's backbone.
Yeah, to hold everything up.
Right. The stem supports the leaves, flowers, and seeds. It also acts as a transportation system carrying food, water, and minerals all over the plant.
Wow, busy stem.
Some stems can even do photosynthesis and store extra food.
Multitasking stems.
Yeah. And finally, we have the leaves. Those green powerhouses.
The main attraction.
Leaves are the stars of the photosynthesis show. They're also involved in transpiration. That's how water moves through the plant.
Transpiration.
It's kind of like the plant sweating.
Uh,
Water travels up from the roots through the stem and then evaporates out of tiny holes in the leaves called stomata. This helps the plant stay cool and also pulls nutrients up from the roots.
wow, so even plants sweat. That's amazing.
It is, and these stomata are like little gateways on the leaves controlling the flow of water and gases in and out of the plant.
Super important job. So how does water get all the way from the roots up to those leaves? And how does the sugar made in the leaves get to the rest of the plant? It's like a complicated delivery system.
It is. Plants have these special tissues for transport. Xylem carries water and nutrients upwards from the roots to the rest of the plant. Think of it like a one-way water pipe.
Xylem like a water pipeline.
Then there's phloem that carries the sugar made in the leaves to other parts of the plant where it's needed or stored. And here's something cool. Phloem can actually transport stuff in multiple directions.
Wow, phloem is like a super highway.
Yeah.
So for the learner, I imagine xylem is like bringing water to your crops, and phloem is like the delivery system for all that harvested food.
Perfect analogy.
All right, let's shift gears back to us humans and talk about those systems in our bodies.
Sure.
Our scientific scrolls mention several different systems. Let's start with the respiratory system.
Right. The respiratory system includes our lungs, and its main job is to bring in oxygen and get rid of carbon dioxide. Remember, respiration. This system is all about that process, delivering oxygen to every single cell in our body so they can power up.
This is like our personal air supply and waste disposal system.
Exactly. Now, the circulatory system, that's all about the heart and blood vessels.
Oh yeah, the circulatory system keeps us going.
Right. It's responsible for moving blood throughout our body, delivering oxygen and nutrients to our cells, and carrying away waste products.
Like a complex network of redstone pipes keeping things flowing.
You got it. And our heart, it's the powerhouse of this system. It has 4 chambers, 2 on the right side handling deoxygenated blood, and 2 on the left side handling oxygenated blood.
Wow, a 4-chambered heart.
Yep. And the left ventricle is actually thicker than the right ventricle.
Why is that?
Because the left ventricle has the tougher job of pumping blood to the entire body, while the right ventricle only pumps blood to the lungs.
Makes sense. So it's like having a double pump system with one side working extra hard.
Yeah. Exactly.
What about the digestive system?
Well, that's our food processing plant. It breaks down the food we eat into tiny bits and absorbs all the good stuff our body needs, like nutrients and water.
Like our personal furnace turning raw materials into fuel.
Precisely. And then there's the excretory system.
Excretory system. Sounds like it handles the less glamorous side of things.
Like it does. It gets rid of waste products from our blood and any extra water.
So it's like taking out the trash.
You got it. And there are different types of waste products like urea, which comes from breaking down proteins in our body, water, and carbon dioxide, which we get rid of through breathing and sweat.
So the excretory system does a lot more than just peeing.
Yeah, it plays a crucial role in keeping our body balanced. It regulates the amount of salt and water in our blood and even helps control our blood pressure.
Wow, the excretory system is a multitasking marvel.
It is. Now, what about the skeletal and muscular systems? These guys are all about movement and support.
Oh yeah, those are important.
They work together to help us move around, protect our internal organs, and even make blood cells in the bone marrow.
So they're like the scaffolding and machinery of our bodies.
Exactly. And finally, there's the reproductive system.
The system that keeps life going.
Right. It's responsible for reproduction and also produces important hormones that control various bodily functions.
So many systems all working together to keep us going. It's mind-blowing.
It is.
Speaking of mind-blowing, how did scientists even figure all this out about cells and these tiny structures? Our scientific scrolls mention something called microscopes.
Yes, microscopes are essential tools for scientists. They let us see things that are way too small for the naked eye, like cells and all those tiny structures we talked about.
So it's like a super magnifying glass.
Yeah. Microscopes use lenses to make tiny objects appear much larger. There's the ocular lens, which is the eyepiece you look through, and then there are objective lenses with different magnifications.
So it's like having a spyglass that lets you zoom in on the microscopic world.
Exactly. There are also knobs to adjust the focus so you can get a clear view of what you're looking at.
That's awesome. What about this wet mount thing? It sounds like scientists are getting their samples all wet.
It does sound a bit strange, but a wet mount is just a simple way to prepare a sample so we can look at it under a microscope.
Okay, how does that work?
You put a tiny drop of liquid, usually water, on a glass slide. Then you carefully place your sample on top of the drop. Then you gently lower a thin piece of glass called a cover slip over the sample.
Why all the liquid in glass?
The liquid helps to keep the sample from drying out, and the cover slip keeps everything flat and in place so you can get a clear view under the microscope.
I see. So it's like creating a tiny underwater viewing window for your sample.
Exactly. And sometimes we add a stain, like iodine, to the water.
Why add a stain?
Well, certain stains can make specific parts of the cell easier to see. Like iodine can make the nucleus of a plant cell really stand out.
So it's like highlighting important features in a blueprint. So let's say the learner wanted to check out an onion cell under a microscope. How would they do that?
Well, first they'd need to make a wet mount of the onion cell.
Okay, we know how to do that.
Right. They'd put a drop of iodine solution on a clean slide, then carefully peel off a thin layer of onion skin and place it on the drop. Then they'd gently lower a cover slip on top.
And boom, onion cell ready for viewing.
Yep. Then they put the slide under the microscope, starting at a low magnification and maybe zooming in with higher magnification if they want to see more detail.
Cool.
Oh, and it's always a good idea to draw a labeled diagram of what you see under the microscope.
Like sketching out the blueprints of the cell.
Precisely. Make sure your diagram is clear. Uses a pencil with single lines, is drawn to scale, and includes a title and the total magnification you used.
What's total magnification again?
It's the magnification of the ocular lens, usually 10 times multiplied by the magnification of the objective lens you're using. Objective lenses come in different strength, like 4 times, 10 times, or even 40 times magnification.
So it's like having different zoom levels on your spyglass.
Exactly. The higher the magnification, the more detail you can see.
Awesome. Now, our scientific scrolls also mention something about investigating starch in leaves. Why would anyone want to do that?
Well, measuring the starch content in leaves can tell us if a plant has been doing photosynthesis.
Ah, so it's like checking if the plant's food factory has been busy.
Exactly. Starch is a way that plants store the glucose they make during photosynthesis. So lots of starch means the plant has been successfully turning sunlight into food.
It's like checking your chests to see if your automated farm is working properly.
Exactly.
Our last topic from the scrolls is a bit more hands-on. It's dissection.
Ah, yes, dissection. It's a way to get up close and personal with the inner workings of organs.
Sounds kind of intense.
It can be, but it's a really valuable way to learn about the structure and function of different organs.
So it's like taking apart a complex redstone contraption to see how it works.
Precisely. But before you go dissecting anything, it's super important to do a risk assessment and make sure you're following all the safety and ethical guidelines.
Safety first.
Absolutely.
Well, the learner, we've done it. We've explored the amazing world of cells, plants, and all the incredible systems that keep us going.
From the tiniest single-celled organisms to the complex machinery of our own bodies, it all comes down to these fundamental units.
So the next time you see a towering tree or a cute little chicken, remember all those microscopic cells hard at work.
It's a reminder that big things really do grow from small beginnings. And for the learner, think about this. How does knowing about all these biological processes change how you interact with the world around you, both in Minecraft and in real life?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive Blockheads. Keep exploring, keep learning, and we'll see you on our next adventure.